This is the Ben Herman Show.
I'm pumped about this one today because right before we just hit play here, we're just kind of talking about it, but I'm joined by one of my oldest friends, Ben Herman, who's an absolutely amazing brother, because we won't even say friends. It doesn't even do due diligence. Like, we're literally like brothers. The old adage, blood is thicker than water, comes into mind. And what that really is like, people get it wrong, right? It's like people think that blood is blood of the family, but what it really is it's blood of the people you've shed blood with in life. Is the blood is thicker than water, and the water's of the womb. And so I think me and Ben both would agree on this, because we'll get into it about different family and things like this, our similar dynamics, but I'm closer with Ben and some other friends than I am with like my own family in certain aspects. And me and Ben have been through a lot of things together, from business things that we've done together to old city we used to live in and all of that. We're going to get into it today. So I could talk an hour. I'm just introducing Ben, but Ben's an entrepreneur, owns multiple businesses, is an amazing, amazing husband and father. He actually lives down in Henderson, Nevada with me now, but we were from Eureka, California 4 years ago. Ben's been here for almost 2 years now. So it's crazy how yoked we are in so many different ways, but how yoked we are in the spirit. And that's one of the things that brought us back together, was the spirit. But what's so cool about that, brother, is like that was one of the things, but now your talents and your traits were so many things I needed in my life. And it's so cool to see things bounce back and forth. So with that being said, welcome to the podcast, brother. Give him a little intro about yourself, because I know I probably didn't do it justice, because you're such an amazing individual.
Oh, if anything, you knocked it out of the park. It's such an honor to be on your platform, man, and your podcast. And of course, man, I love you like a brother. Like, we have so much history together. And it's just incredible to have witnessed your journey, like our journey, right? I mean, you got to see me like in my younger entrepreneur days, and then I got to see you. So it's just been a beautiful, like, full circle moment in that way. So honestly, there's nothing else I can add. You went way further than I would have gone. So thank you for that.
Well, you're amazing, brother. You know what's so cool, guys, is that, so like we said, me and Ben were from Eureka, California. You don't know where that's at. That's like up by the Oregon border in the northern part of California, like 5 hours north of San Francisco. So that shows how north it is. It's just a small community, impoverished in certain aspects, but it's an amazing, beautiful community. And there's some amazing people there as well. It's just a different place. But I guess when I said Ben's an entrepreneur, dude is started off as a DJ first and foremost, and most of his businesses are around DJing in multiple different aspects, and entertainment companies and coaching companies and things of the such. But that's how we originally connected. Gosh, Ben, I don't know how old you were when we first connected, and some of you guys know and some of you guys don't know that I used to rap, right? Like, if that's not like gonna make people laugh, it probably should. But gosh, I was probably, Ben also DJ'd my wedding. So gosh, I was probably 24-ish, 5-ish when we first connected. So you were, gosh, because I'm 43 now. How old are you?
43. I'm 37. So 6 years apart.
So yeah,
24. So I was 18.
Wow.
18. Yeah.
Which is crazy to think, bro. You know, the way we met each other, right? Like through music and things like that. And then for your company to DJ my wedding, I just even saying it now, I don't think at that time it seemed as big of a deal, but saying it now that like my wedding was DJ'd by an 18-year-old's company, you know, like that's wild to think now, right? Yeah, man, it's like crazy, the histories and how our lives have been intertwined. The crazy part, so a little bit about my story, is that I was actually evicted by my own dad at the age of 18. So it was actually a really crazy year. I had started my DJ business officially the year prior to that as a junior in high school. And what I was doing is I was putting on dance parties to try to attract people, because nobody was giving me a shot. First off, people say I look young for my age now, but could you imagine at 18 what a baby face I used to have, right? So adults just wouldn't take me serious. And when I was door knocking or cold calling to try to get into venues, nobody would give me a shot. So it's like, I'm tired of like waiting for opportunities to land in my lap. I'm gonna go out and just be bold and try to create an opportunity for myself. And once we were able to do that through the years of this, the 17, I guess, me being 17 to 18, then now I had enough capital to be able to start, do some cooler things like pulling in artists, right? And don't let Tommy fool you. He's got some major skills and bars on the mic. So don't let him fool you. Like, he's definitely very talented. So yeah, that's how it happened, right? It was our other great friend, James. He was a touring musician across the country at that time.
Actually, Tommy, you were too, to a certain extent, right? You were
Yeah,
traveling
not
at
as
that
much
time?
as James was, but definitely we would tour from time to time and go and do it.
Yeah. So in a way, I looked at you guys as a way bigger deal than me, and it was like your guys' name was going to help draw in more people to my party. That's what it came down to. So I reached out to them and hired them on as artists, and we had just a great time, and we stayed in touch after that. That's how that friendship started.
Yeah, man. It's just wild to think back. Like, I think now, right? Like, that's just so cool as we get older, right? And I'm sure, I think I've shared that stat with you before. It's like they've done studies in the most productive decades of our lives is from 60 to 70. The second one is 50 to 60. And the third's from 70 to 80, which is wild to think, right? Now, obviously, it's not for certain people, right? When they're not making maybe the best of choices and things like that for their life. But if we really look and we start connecting the dots back, right? Like, where I'm at 43 now, if we really look back of like, why did God really put us in each other's lives? Was it so I could spit some bars and make you some cash back then? Maybe a little bit at that time, but really he was setting the platform for where we are now. But then also we'll look again in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and then we'll be like, dude, remember this? And it's going to like keep ping ponging, bouncing from different times of like, I can't believe this, where we all started and where we're benefiting each other in so much. But just at that time, it's wild because it was so long ago in so many different ways. I mean, obviously I've seen your maturation in a lot of different aspects, but I also feel like for obviously, especially at 18 in those, you definitely were far more mature than I was in certain ways, where I had a lot of maturing to do and a lot of growth to do. Like, dude, like figuring out this business for me has been one of the bigger challenges of my life because I don't love business. And anytime I ever say like to people, like, dude, like we were just talking about funnels before we got on here and things like that. And I like it probably on a scale of 1 to 10. I like it at about a 2. Whereas Ben, think loves it at like a 10, like I think it's like Ben's love language is, business. I love coaching. I love this stuff, but I don't love that aspect of it. But it's so important to have these friends in our life because, man, I can't, obviously thank you and honor you enough. Because if we're really even circling back, maybe not even around the time when you were DJing my wedding, but like, when I had quit my job, which I would love to get into, actually, I don't want to fast forward too time. But I remember one time you sent me a YouTube video, and it was, and I'm sure you're going to remember it, the video. It was this guy talking about, I don't remember who it is now, but he was talking about being too good to be great. And I've used that line now all the time, but I remember when you sent it to me, I was kind of going through a hard time. I was pulling back on like the music stuff we were doing together, and you were trying to inspire me, right? Not like, dude, like, no, you're good. I'm not saying you're not, but like, bro, like you could be great. And I remember at that time that like, I took it in my own mind as like an offense, right? Like, and I know this wasn't, you weren't trying to do that, looking back now, that just shows where my mindset was, where I was like, man, this guy thinks like, I need to do better. Like, how dare him to think that way, like it just thinking back now, it's like, well, man, that's probably how people think of me when I'm talking that way to them, but that's just the mindset of where I was at. But I was, and honestly, I wasn't even good. I was like below good. I was probably like a 5 or a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. Right.
I give you more credit than that.
But I think in fulfillment aspects though, I mean, I was, because I had a good marriage, right? And I had some good kids who I was leading, and I had a house and I had income, but I wasn't fulfilled, right? So I wasn't even good, like in that aspect of things. But so it's just crazy to fast forward now and just see how far ahead you were even at that time, because I was probably 33 or something. And so you were, gosh, then you were 27, sending me things now that like I preach now, but at such a young age, man. So I got to honor you for all of that, because it's just been so cool to see how diligent in what you are. And I know I'm going on a tangent here, but like just how consistent. I think that's the one thing that you are as a friend, but also as a business owner and all of that, is like you're consistent, man. And that's like the biggest thing, I think anything anybody could ever have in life.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I tell people a lot is that starting a business and running a business is one of the best self-development programs you can ever be a part of. Because like, especially as a small business owner, you are the business. So if your business fails, it's on you. If the business succeeds, it's on you. And if you have something that I had when I was younger, because of my fear of the things that happened and the words that were being told to me on a regular basis from my parents, they didn't have any belief in me. The last thing I wanted to do is prove them right, that I was worthless, right? And so I wanted to run so far away from failure that I was desperate to do anything in my power to become better. So that's the only thing that you saw, man, is like at 27 at that point, right? I'd started the business 10 years prior to that at 17 years old, right? So 10 years of just self-development over and over and over again. And as the business grew and as I hired people, I had to learn communication skills, leadership skills, all these things. I mean, it really pushed me beyond my comfort zone, because otherwise I had this fear of failure that could, you know, be this huge embarrassment and so forth. Now it's less about that. But back then it was, I was fighting insecurity back then.
It's wild to think when you say you're already at 10 years in, because technically Diane and I are at year 4, right? And you're right. Like, this has been the hardest, most challenging thing. And we've been through 20 years ago of infidelity, right? 20 years ago of me being a drug addict, like 20 years ago, me being, or probably a little bit longer now, being in jail, right? Like, I've been through so many things, like, but business, and I'm not trying to do this to scare anybody away, because it's also, when you do it and it is your purpose and your passion, it's worth it. It's just so much work. I don't want to say work, because it is, but it's different. It's just like the emotional struggles of that as that it goes, and the endless thinking about it. Like, there's been times, and I think we've all probably been there, where we like, man, it'd be just nicer to just go work at Costco. So at 5 o'clock comes, I clock out, and I never think about it again the rest of the night until the next day when I clock in, you know. But at the same time, that's choosing your heart on that side of things. And so it's just wild to hear you say that right now at 10 years at that spot. And so now, you know, you've got another 10 years on top of it of how much, no wonder you are who you are, is because that's so much personal development along the way. So many like failures, successes, everything along the way, which is just all lessons, you know.
I think that, you know, the fun part about life, if you decide to make it, it's a game, and there's multiple levels to this game, right? And like, just like a video game, you want to excel and you want to get to the next level, right? So that's part of it. And every level is going to be a little more challenging and introduce new nuances or new surprises that you may not be prepared for, right? And if you do fall, or you get, you know, killed, I guess, in the game, and you respawn, right? I'm thinking of my son right now with Minecraft. Then you get another chance. And that's the cool part, is every day that you get to wake up. By the way, I should say this again. Every day you get to wake up. It's not owed to you, right? It's a gift. It's truly a gift from God that you get another chance to live life and pursue the things that you care about, if you choose to. But you and I both know, Tommy, that there's so many people out there that are just living passively and just allowing life to happen to them, right? Instead of living life intentionally. So I would just say that, like, you know, when you pursue life on purpose, you can't help but want to step up and become greater and better. And by the way, here's the crazy part, right? So again, I appreciate the kind words, but every level, there's a new level of insecurity that's introduced to us, right? Because we're not good at being able to cross the next level, right? So I just literally just this last month ran into all sorts of roadblocks that were actually pretty like depressing in a way. Like it really got to my ego, my psyche of like, man, I'm not good enough right now, right? I never accept like that I'm not good enough forever. It's just that I'm not good enough right now, and I can't do it by myself, right? Of course, I lean on God, but in addition to that, I also ask God to introduce new people into my life that could help me gain a better, clearer understanding of the things that I don't know yet. Because a lot of times the things that are holding us back is that we just don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And we love to just lay in this comfort blanket of, well, I love my feelings and I love the way that like I think, and because I don't want to like think anything outside of that, that's the reason why we stay in a plateau. And so that's my biggest fear, is I never want to be the same person the following year. I'm always wanting to be a different Ben the following year. And so I literally talked to my wife, and I was like, babe, I think I need to find another coach. I need to find someone else that's ahead of me, because right now I'm trying to solve this issue by myself, but I can't. Dude, I just joined this coaching program last week and already just transformative in just 1 week's time. There's so many answers that I learned, because just being in the same vicinity as this person that thinks on a way higher level, that's what unlocks these are the things that I don't know that I'm now getting to know, right? So like, I also want to honor your clients who are reaching out to you, right? That have hired you and Diane, because that's what they need. That's what we all need, by the way. You have a coach as well, right? So it's like, it's never about trying to pursue this all on your own. It's a lonely place to try to stay in solidarity and by yourself, trying to solve these problems all on your own.
And it's miserable doing it on our own, because then it's like, dude, we're meant to be in community. We really are, you know. Whether that's for personal development reasons or whatever reasons, like when we're isolated, it's not good, right? At all. That's when the devil loves to have a playground. Is when we isolate ourselves, he goes to town, because we're not bouncing anything off of it. You know, and it's so important to have coaching, like you said, 1 week, dude. And it's just it's mind blowing. I remember when I first invested in my first coaching program, it was like, I was so scared, you know, and since then I've spent such an insane amount of money on coaching, like all my free money on coaching, to be honest with you. And some of it's business, right? Some is faith-based, some of it's personal development, multiple different things. And it's crazy the value. We were just talking about multiple different coaching programs before we got on here that I'm a part of right now. Like, oh, this one got me this value. And then you were like, oh, and that other one that you got to gave me this tip and this. And it's just so cool how it is. And that's what I love about coaches. They're a picture of possibility for us, right? It's like, you've been where I've got, you were here. Now I know you're there, so it is possible to get there. You know, that's why I've said that, like, you know, you're really good at honoring me too, dude. And I've just said that so many times. I think with you is like, dude, Mo, I wouldn't be where I'm at in business if you didn't show me it was possible that you could do it coming from Humboldt County. And because what's crazy about that is I knew other business owners there. They were very simple business owners, and maybe that's their road to be, or maybe that's just where they're stuck at. But they were just like, here's my business and this is what I do, right? And maybe some of them I didn't know the behind the scenes, but not only were you growing your business, you were looking to grow yourself, and then you were looking to expand and do these other big things, rather than being like, cool, I own this business and this is what it'll always be. This is my ROI and I'm just going to stay here for the rest of my life. And that's what it is, right? That's never been your vision, right? And so that's what a lot of people are in that community. But you always showed me, like, so it is showed me it's possible to be able to do this. Every time I got to a wall and was like, oh my gosh, maybe this is only for select people who had from certain areas, I could look to you and be like, no, Ben's doing it. And it's not like he came from a family with money, or he came from a community where, like we live in now, where there's just a lot of wealthy people around. There was none there, but pretty much, right? So it was like, man, if you could do it, I could do it. So you were a picture possibility for me, and you're weren't even my coach. You're just a great friend, right, and brother. So that's why it's so important to have amazing people in our lives. And I think that's where people get stuck to, is they kind of, you know, if we look back, like before we even started this or maybe I did say at the beginning of the podcast, but either way, I said, you're like one of my oldest friends, you know, which is crazy to think about now, because all my other friends have, I don't want to say have either fallen off or we've just grown apart. And I'm not saying I'm growing and I'm better than them. They are stuck in certain areas, but not that I don't have my frustrations, but we've grown apart. Well, the God's replaced those, right? And so as that, you became one of my oldest friends, because we're like-minded in a certain ways. We value God. We value personal development. We value being a good husband. We value being a good dad, right? Once that's the type of qualifications that, like, is a resume to be a friend of mine, right? Like, if you want that type of stuff, we can hang out. Because if not, I don't want to get the negative stuff that you're going to put into my life, or vice versa, you know? So,
you know, another thing I want to highlight real quick that you said earlier is, if you're losing hope, find that person that can reinstill that hope in you, right? And sometimes you may not be able to get that hope or that relationship for free. And a lot of us are scared to make the investment. And I'm not trying to make a sales pitch to hire, you know, Tommy and Diane, right? But find someone, because watch how fast hope can be unlocked. The whole reason why you're feeling hopeless is a lot of times because you feel like you've run out of options, right? You don't have any other options to choose, to like any other tricks to try. But once you get around someone who's like 10 steps ahead of you, then you can be like, oh, try this. This is how I actually got to 10 steps ahead of you, is by doing this, because they've gone down that path already before. It's no longer this, you know, vague concept or idea. This is reality to them. This is their new truth, because they've experienced it already, right? So I just really love that you said that. That's like, you know, when people are feeling hopeless, like, you got to find someone to reinstill that hope in you.
Amen, dude. Because I don't know if you've ever read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Read it or heard of it? Yeah, right. So that book's basically about hope, you know, like, it's such a huge thing, you know, like so basically, if you guys never read the book or you don't know about it, it's this therapist who was in a concentration camp during, World War II, and he had a crazy mindset and things he witnessed, right? I couldn't imagine there being much more worse things to go through than be living in a concentration camp. But he was saying like the death rate would be so much higher the day after Christmas and the day after people's birthdays. He said people would just drop like flies. That's because their spirit was broke from the hope. They had hoped to be home by Christmas with their family, that they'd be out of this misery. And when it didn't happen, their spirit was broke, they lost hope, and then their body would give out. So it shows how much your mind is connected with your actual lifespan, where their body just gave out at that point. Sure, they were malnourished and all the things that they were dealing with, but they could have held on because of their mind at that point in time with the hope. So it's just crazy that it is. And it's just, that's all we need is just, as long as we have hope, right? And somebody there to bounce these ideas off of, somebody there just to be support with us, somebody to be vulnerable with of whatever we're going through is such a huge part of it, brother. I know we only got unfortunately 15 minutes left, but I want to circle back a little bit, because what you guys don't know is I would not be where I'm at now if it wasn't for Ben. I had this, some of you guys know my testimony and whatever. When I found God, I was around the time before I got married, then I had 8-ish years. I'm doing good, man. I was solid with God and things like that, but just, very just working the same job. At that time I was making maybe $40,000 a year. And at that time it was a decent amount of living for where I lived and things like that, but that would have literally been my living forever. But anyways, came to a spot where I worked at a Native American casino where I worked off of tips, and I made minimum wage, but I made 90% of my salary was off of tips, right? Well, they were going to get rid of the part of my position to get rid of majority of the tips. And I was like, what? I gave 11 years to this company. I can't just work for minimum wage. And at that time, I wasn't rapping very much anymore from time to time. And Ben, being a DJ, was like, man, you get back into music. You should go out on your own, encouraging me to be an entrepreneur and things like that. He had just come back into my life. Gosh, I want to say, I don't remember. I don't know if you remember, but I want to say it must have been 2 months prior, maybe. It was,
man, I was 25 because I remember when I asked God back into my heart, I was like, I don't know any Christians in my life right now besides Tommy, because we'd been acquainted on social media. And I saw that you put out God posts. So I was like, you're the only person that I know that I can figure out where to go from here.
Dude, so I love that you bring that up, because I skipped over probably one of the biggest parts of our testimony. And just even hear you say that, I forget, man, that I was putting out God posts on social media back then. Yeah. And just to give anybody else hope, when you put out these things, you don't have to be trying to be an influencer or create a business. Put out your thoughts and your feelings, because you don't know who's listening or watching. I had no idea that Ben was seeing posts from me, who was not trying to be a business person at that time at all. I was just putting out posts because that's what people do on social media, right? Yeah. So for you to see a faith one, and then I remember you reaching out and saying that, dude, I'm trying to bring God back into my life. And you had did what Romans 12:2 says not to do. Do not conform to the patterns of the world. You had conformed to the patterns of the world, got the money, got the women and things like that, and realized, well, that don't do much for me, so it's just crazy to see that you came back in my life at that time. And I remember we started getting yoked up and we'd have a lot of spiritual talks. And then that's when the job thing came about for me. So God, it's crazy to think about. There's a story in the Bible in Stephen Furtick's new book, Do the New You. And I know you love Stephen Furtick, where he was talking about, I think it was in Gideon, where there's a spot where the river stops when they get to the river. But for the river to stop, God had to make that happen 6 hours earlier upstream for it to stop. So just even hearing you talk about this story right now, God had to plant these seeds upstream. So not only for you to find faith, right? Because they're not finding it because it was just coming back into your life. You already had a slight of a relationship, but upstream, right? Even then, if we keep looking back before, doing my wedding, me doing events for you. Now this moment where it was about to be a crucial time, right? You looking for faith, and then which ultimately set the plate for you to find Melissa, right? Because if you weren't the Ben without faith, she ain't coming probably in your life. Definitely not. And then me to be able to leave my job. It's crazy just to even think about that right now, how God set that all up, man. That's wild.
And then how I was seeking you and then it flipped, and you're actually then seeking my help as well.
Yeah.
So we were both actually relying on each other during that season in life.
That's
Incredible.
wild. I haven't thought about that in a while, brother. And I think we sometimes take these things for granted, you know, like just like I said, we live in it's 80 degrees outside, bro. We got palm trees outside.
I got my shorts on. I've got my shorts on. It's only the beginning of April, right?
Amazing. I know that's just crazy that man, just that's why I love just going back and talking about this, is because Ben was encouraging me at that time to leave my job, which, dude, everybody told me at that time was stupid, except for Ben, the only person.
I said, burn the boats, burn the boats.
And then I did burn the boats, and it felt like a stupid move. But here we are, you know, 10 years later, and it was the smartest move ever. But yeah, I burned the boats to do the music, and we started collaborating a bunch. But I got fearful, right? And I got fearful. It was like when Peter was walking on the water. Even though he was walking on water, he got fearful and sunk. I got fearful because it was the beginning, and I was wanting to see like, hey, I left my job, and then like it all just to blow up and like just amazingness. Not realizing, bro, you're just at step one, you know?
Yeah. You've got 10 more years of this before you see anything, right?
It's crazy just to think about that, brother, and to be here now, you know? And so, I mean, some of you guys don't know my testimony. It was like an 8-year wilderness period after a couple of years of trying, maybe like a year of trying to do music and putting out some decent songs and things like that. But it wasn't like anything that was picking up steam. And that was before, like, I think Spotify wasn't even out yet at that point in time and things like that. And nobody was really pushing social media stuff at that time too big. And so it was just a wild time, but just, it's crazy to think back of what just to where we are now. And so I did 8 years of not being an entrepreneur and doing it the wrong way to now being with where we're at.
One thing I just want to honor you on, man, is like, you know, I can hear as you're explaining your past, so you don't give yourself a lot of credit, but I got to witness it, right? Guys, like I was actually in his life during that time. And yeah, he's definitely like a Tommy 10.0 now, right? But even back then, he was always still a Tommy that strived for more. Even though you don't give yourself credit for that, man, I just want to remind you. So you're pursuing your BMX career as well, right? So you're still winning championships on a regular basis, it seemed like, and you're training hard for that. I'm pretty sure you're the very first person that I ever saw follow Wim Hof's method on cold showers and cold plunges, right? Before it was even a really popular thing that it is today. Yeah. Right? Like you would do these things, man, that really still inspired, even in our small community, still inspired a circle of people that are still in our lives now. Like I think about Calder, right? Was looking up to you back then as well. So it's like, it's interesting how, you know, even when you don't feel like you're crushing it, yeah, you weren't the Tommy that you are today, but man, there's still a desire in your heart that you wanted to do something more.
He's crazy that you mentioned like somebody like Calder. He's somebody I need to get on the podcast. And so guys, he's like a friend of ours, but it's a similar past that I have of like drug addiction. He was in maybe even in a darker spot than I was in. And he's younger than me. Gosh, is Calder your age, Ben?
I think he's a little older. Yeah, like a year or two older. Yeah.
So similar age, you know, and man, he's this guy who's just transformed his life in so many ways. And he always, same thing, he always honors me for being a huge part of it. And for me, like, and I'm thankful that it feels good that he does, but I'm always like, but you're right. Because when I was inspiring him, it was still dark days for me. I was still in a struggling part mentally and emotionally, and kind of even in the spiritual wilderness at that time. I was still going to church and still praying, but I wasn't like doing it God's way. And so just to even think about that, right? Like how all of us still have impact in people's lives, even when it seems like we're losing. Right. So I had no following and was not trying to create a business at the time. Remember, when Calder really started following my stuff, like, and he's just a local guy who knew me. We worked together at the casino, but we weren't tight. We had done drugs together years before. I was doing this thing called 365 to Thrive, where I was putting out like a video every day. Right. I was probably getting 2 viewers, you know, and
I was one of
Calder
them.
was one. So only reason I did 365 to Thrive is because I was in such a struggling spot. I needed to commit to something. And it's crazy to think about that now, that like Calder was this dude who got a huge transformation, and out of the one of the 2 people who were watching the videos changed his life, you know. So it's
just to provide people context that are listening to this. So Calder, you know, went from drug addiction to sober, right? He's now married. He's got a child, or actually 2 kids, and he's an amazing father, right? Crushing it in his career as well. He's a guy that's done, I'm pretty sure I've lost count, but 2, 3, 4 times 75 hard back to back. I feel like he's worked out like 200 and something days straight without, even while he's sick, rain or shine. This is who the new Calder is now, right? And it all started probably with just watching your videos and on social media.
It's wild, man.
You know, it's planting that
crazy
seed, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's just, but that's the importance of having people in our life like you and me and Calder. Like, and so what's crazy when Calder honors me, he doesn't understand that, and you understand this, right? Is like sometimes we just need somebody behind our sales that's like championing us, right? Especially a lot of men, affirmations is our love language. Yeah. Calder doesn't understand that when it felt like nobody cared about anything I put out, he was championing me. When I first did a online fitness nutrition program, who was one of my very first clients? Calder, right? Like it was people like that I would not be where I'm at today if I didn't have somebody championing me back then saying, don't, keep going, when it felt like I had one person, you know, definitely not enough money to make a living off of, champion, right? And so it's a good thing for wherever you're at in your life, whether you feel like you're in the dumps right now, somebody is watching, and that might just be your wife. It might just be your kids, or it might be none of them. And it's somebody at your work that's looking and they're like, man, I wish I was so-and-so, but they don't understand what's going on in your head. So somebody's always wishing they're in your spots. And so what happens when they're doing that, when you're not in a good spot? Imagine the impact when you are in a good spot, right? So it is motivation to keep going, because your ripple effect will be so much bigger in so many different ways, dude.
And I would say that if you've got kids, it's not if they're watching you, they're absolutely watching you, right? It's more about they watch what you do. They don't listen to what you say. So you better be aware of your actions and the way that you act every single day, because that's what they're picking up on.
100%, dude. So here's a wild testimony. Literally, I just had it right before we jumped on here. Yeah. So I have like a community that we're saying we're doing it on school now. And a guy who's in there, he's been with us now for maybe, I don't know, a month, maybe a little bit longer. Dude, radical transformation in him personally already, in his marriage already. But he shared in the community just moments before I jumped on here. He said, guys, I got to get vulnerable and share with you. He said, in February of last year, my wife and we had a stillbirth of our daughter 2 weeks before she was supposed to be born. Like we were holding a full-size baby that was dead in our arms, stillbirth, right? Like to me, even to think about that, I could only imagine there's zero pain that would ever feel worse than that, right? Yeah. And he said at that time, that shook my wife's faith to where she kind of like pulled back and was like, you know, I don't know if she said she's done, but probably in her mind, she was hurt that bad enough, she pulled back. Yeah. He said, guys, I literally just pulled up to my house moments ago, walked up to the front steps, and my wife is sitting on the front porch reading the Bible. And he says, the only reason this is happening is because I joined this program. Tommy encouraged me to be in the Bible daily and having these daily disciplines. And I started doing it. I didn't force it on her. She just saw me in the distance being back in the Bible, because we both went through that together. But here I am getting back. She started watching my actions change, my habits change, the way I'm loving her change, all these other things change. Just from watching, not him saying, babe, you need to be in the Bible. She's now sitting on the front porch reading her Bible and healing her heart, right? So it's all what you just said. Somebody's watching, whether that's your wife or your kids, somebody's watching. That's who we're setting the standards for. Because if we're not doing that, they're watching somebody else who they shouldn't be watching, setting the standards for them. And that's not a good place to have them, you know? So,
yeah. I actually want to wrap up and end on this point, because it's a huge one. And I think that hopefully it's encouraging to someone that's listening, which is, if you've ever been hurt by someone in your past, right? Maybe it's your parents, maybe it's a past relationship, right? If they would have changed and they would have done things and just like, without even claiming to say that they're sorry, because how many times have we heard them say sorry, right? But when they actually changed, like their actions showed more than what their words said, wouldn't you quickly forgive them? The whole reason why we hold on to anger of those that hurt us in the past is because they never changed, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're that someone who has a struggling relationship with maybe your kids, with your spouse, with your friendships, or anyone around you, even your employees or your teammates at work, right? Imagine how many people you would have forgiven if they would have just changed and be that person. Be that person.
That's powerful, brother. Not a better way to end this than that, because it is. We can say all the things that we want to say, but it really doesn't mean anything if we're not backing it up with our actions. It has to be that, and that's more important than the words. So, man, that is powerful. Guys, take action. That's the biggest thing on whatever that is you're doing right now. It all compounds every single day. Brother,
Amen.
Next time, dude, we just need to do a round 2, and we need to book off like an hour and a half.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Joe Rogan style, 2-3 hours.
I know.
Let's go.
Just go
I'm ready
deep
for
on
it.
this. We'll do a 3-way one. We'll get James in on here on this. We'll do like the 3-way podcast. So anyways, brother, thank you so much, man. Thank you for being who you are, man, because I literally wouldn't be in this spot where I'm at right now, which I'm so grateful to be in. If it wasn't for you, you've been the biggest benefactor of that outside of obviously my wife and God. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, man, for honoring me, but also right back at you, man. Like I've already told you right there was a time that I became lukewarm in my faith and I started questioning my faith, and you're the one who really helped me walk through that painful time. So I owe that gratitude to you as well.
Yeah.